House Republicans are set to begin the formal process of selecting a new speaker later this morning. In just a few hours, Republican-led lawmakers will hold an internal election behind closed doors. The Republican conference met last night to hear from the two congressmen who have formally entered the race to be speaker, Steve Scalise of Louisiana, Jim Jordan of Ohio. As we mentioned, despite signaling he'd be open to the speakership again, NBC News has learned Kevin McCarthy has asked members now not to nominate him for speaker today. Joining us now, co-host of Showtime's The Circus, NBC News national affairs analyst John Heilemann, and congressional reporter for The Hill, Michael Schnell. Good morning to you both. Michael, let me start with you up on Capitol Hill. So handicap this race for us. We had a lot of Republican members coming out of that room yesterday saying nobody's even close to 217. That's the number this time around because there are 433 members currently in the House, so you don't have to get to 218. But the conventional wisdom is that this is going to be a battle. There is no consensus candidate. Nobody's close to 217. So how's this going to play out from here?
Yeah, hey, Willie, good morning. Look, right now the race is in a dead heat. You mentioned it right there. Majority Leader Steve Scalise, House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, neither of them are a clear frontrunner in this race. Both have picked up significant endorsements from across the GOP conference. But as you mentioned, no one is close to that subsequent 217 votes needed to be speaker. So how this is going to play out right now is an open question. One thing that is of general consensus is that it's going to be a bit of a lengthy process. As you mentioned, House Republicans this morning are going to huddle behind closed doors with the intent of nominating a candidate for speaker. A big question this morning is whether or not the conference will accept a rules change to increase the threshold to nominate a speaker from a majority of the conference to that 217 vote number. The point there would be to avoid a messy public fight on the House floor over speaker. Whether or not that rules change will take effect remains to be seen, but that'll really set the pace for how the rest of this speaker's race plays out.
All right, John Heilemann, given the massive, horrific assault on Israel sparking a war in retaliation that could spread like wildfire across the Middle East and has a lot of interesting implications for the U.S., how important is it that we have a Speaker of the House right now?
How high can you count, Mika, on the importance scale? Pretty important. Look, what we saw last week in the deposing of Kevin McCarthy was a lot of things were in play there, but one of the things that you came away with was the reality that the House, the House Republicans were not, for at least for that period of time, were not a functional majority that were to be able to run the House. And the question of how functional, whether they can become functional again, at the highest level under the most stressful circumstances, with the stakes, as high as they could be on the world stage, is really what's on. What's really going to be on display here today? How this is a situation of great chaos, and it could be a very lengthy, prolonged circumstance. The House is not. There's been no indication with McCarthy, after McCarthy being knocked out, that the House Republicans are any more have their stuff together any more than they had it last week. And so there's not a lot of clarity. There's not a unity candidate. There's not a consensus. Both Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan are publicly and privately claiming to be to have the race locked up. Steve Scalise says, don't pay attention to the public endorsement count. I have it all wired. Jim Jordan leads in the public endorsement count, but because he is perceived as being so much of a bomb thrower, there's a lot of question about whether that is something that the House Republicans will ultimately be able to get behind. And as you said, as you raised, the specter here is a House without a speaker is a House that does not work. And this House without a speaker going forward for not just potentially today or tomorrow, but potentially all the way through through the end of the week, if the Republicans can't pull it together, which there's some chance that this could take quite a long time, is a very difficult and dangerous situation on the world stage. The American leadership, as Joe Biden pointed out yesterday, is essential. And in terms of being able to do the kind of aid for Israel that there is a bipartisan consensus for, you got to have a functional House. And we don't have that right now.
So, Michael, Representative Massey said yesterday that he thought there'd only be a 2% chance, 2%, that the House could come away with a new speaker by day's end. And to John's point, the rest of the world is watching America here and waiting for its support for Israel. So I know the White House administration officials tell me that they're at least floating the idea of linking Israeli aid and Ukraine aid, thinking both vital in this defense of democracy. What are the chances you give that of succeeding in Congress once a speaker is put in place, whenever that might be?
Look, Jonathan, I think that the odds of that happening are actually pretty low right now. And even though, of course, Israel aid is of high importance to Congress overall, particularly Republicans, and we've seen them emphasize that in the wake of Hamas's attack over the weekend. But Ukraine aid, on the other hand, has been a lightning rod within the House Republican Conference. We've seen it divide the conference pretty bitterly just earlier this year. Last month, actually, we saw a vote on the House floor where more Republicans voted against sending more aid to Ukraine compared to those who voted in favor of it. So I think that the fear there is, while, for example, I spoke to Tom Cole about this, and he had an interesting point, Republican from Oklahoma. He said, while he's supportive of both Ukraine aid and Israel aid, he doesn't like the idea of jamming those who are skeptical of sending more aid to Ukraine, jamming them into supporting this joint package by including Israel on. And I think that we're hearing from a lot of other lawmakers who are saying sending aid to Israel, one of the U.S.'s closest allies, is of the utmost importance. We should do that on its own. That should be dealt with separately. And then a third part of this, I think that lawmakers want to do that in a pretty speedy fashion, as John mentioned, once the House can actually get back to legislative business, once we actually have a speaker in place. So that idea has been floated, and some lawmakers may try, but I think that there's a low possibility that actually comes to fruition just because of all those difficulties laid out.
And John Heilemann, just briefly on the politics of this, Biden's speech seemed to get global respect and even respect from extremists on Fox News. How do you think this plays out in the weeks and months to come, as this could become a wider war, definitely is going to last quite some time, and also given what we have or have not heard from the Republican frontrunner on this?
Well, I mean, it's obviously an essential question. You occasionally have, even in at the level of presidential politics, especially during a primary campaign, which is what's going on the Republican side, you tend to have a almost exclusively domestic focus. In a general election where we get the two candidates from the two nominees from each side, the questions of foreign policy, national security, and strength in particular as a character attribute become more important. But in these primary campaigns, they tend to be much more domestic, except when something this big happens. And I was out in Iowa just the last couple of days. I'm headed up to New Hampshire at the end of the week. Republicans are trying to figure out amongst themselves how to talk about this. They recognize it's a real-time kind of test of leadership, their own ability to kind of look presidential, to convey a command of foreign policy. And they're also, in some cases, trying to find some way to gain some advantage against each other. You saw Mike Pence come out, take a big swing at Donald Trump and at Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy. Yesterday, Tim Scott gave a speech in Washington where he attacked Joe Biden. The one thing that Republicans can all agree on, the only thing they can agree on right now at the presidential candidate level, is that it was a bad idea for Joe Biden to not to do the hostage swap that was done, but the $6 billion, there's a lot of, obviously, you guys have talked about this for the past couple of days, the complexities around that. For Republicans, that has just become the only talking point. It's that somehow Joe Biden's responsible for this. The $6 billion was terrible and somehow was responsible for this by giving that $6 billion to Iran. $6 billion we know. Again, we could go into the weeds about what that actually was. But this is the thing. If this war is a wider, more brutal war, if it's a ground war that takes many, many months, this is going to be at the center of the presidential campaign. That's why, for a lot of reasons, Joe Biden's speech yesterday, the stakes for it, both diplomatically in terms of world leadership and also politically, were sky high. And I agree with you. I think that he could not have done better yesterday in terms of generating bipartisan respect for the things that he said and being foursquare on Israel's side.
And as Admiral Kirby said on our show yesterday, that money can be frozen. It's not in Iran yet. It hasn't gotten there. And so there's that. And that fund was set up by the Trump administration. So just putting a pin on that. John Heilemann, thank you very much. Congressional reporter for The Hill, Michael Schnell, thank you for your reporting this morning. Great to have you on.